Hello everyone, hope you're all well. I wanted to put a special video. I had some requests from people saying that I should put a video about tennis. Just basic, like the most important tennis tournaments and the players, just to give a narration of it because a lot of people, obviously, there are some people who really follow tennis, and I have a lot of friends who do that. I mean, older people as well, and I'm like a real massive tennis fan as well. And even though obviously I love cricket, I mean, tennis is one of the sports that I really love most. Sometimes, many times, I've even kept cricket aside and I have watched tennis because it's one of the most beautiful, in my opinion, the most beautiful sport to watch. I do like football as well, but tennis, there is something very special and unique about tennis. And there are a lot of things that you learn as well from tennis. One of the things is that, I mean, if you follow the tennis calendar and you watch tennis around the world, you get to know the timings of different countries that I learned from, and also about many different cultures, because so many players from different countries, so you get to learn a lot. And obviously, even through the commentary, I mean, even your vocabulary, a lot of things that you learn from tennis. Basically, there are four major Grand Slam events. The first one is the Australian Open, and it is played on a hard court, and it happens normally around mid-January. That's when the Australian Open is played. It's played on a hard court, and by the way, there are basically four surfaces, three surfaces. I mean, basically, grass court, clay court, hard court, and there are also indoor hard courts as well. So there are like three, four different surfaces, I can say. And Australian Open is played on a hard court. And then the second Grand Slam is the French Open, which happens around end of May, and it is played on a clay court. And then the third Grand Slam is the Wimbledon, the big Wimbledon tournament, which is the only Grand Slam that is on grass court. Obviously, even French Open is the only one on clay court. And then the last Grand Slam of the year, the fourth and the final Grand Slam, is the U.S. Open, Flushing Meadows, and that is played on a hard court as well. And French Open is also called the Roland Garros as well. So these are the four major Grand Slam events of the year. And then there are nine Masters events. They are the nine biggest tournaments after the four Grand Slams. There is also an ATP Tour Finals, which I'll come to. And by the way, there is a ATP and WTA. ATP is the men's tour, and WTA is the women's tour. And the nine Masters events, I mean, it has 1,000 points each. And those events, the first one is actually at Indian Wells in the US, the first Masters event, and that happens after the Australian Open, a bit after the Australian Open. And then there is the second Masters event at Miami, Florida. It used to be called the Lipton Championship, and we need to obviously depending on the sponsors, but it is called the Miami Open now, and both of them are played on hard courts as well. And then before the French Open, it's like a warm up towards the French Open. There are three clay court Masters events, and the first one is at Monte Carlo. It's called the Monte Carlo Masters, played on clay. And then you have the Madrid Open. It's also on clay in Spain. And then the last Masters on clay is the Italian Open. I mean, it's one of the oldest tournaments as well. In many years, I mean, many years before, in the 90s, there used to be a Hamburg Open, German Open, but it is not played anymore. So it's the three Masters played on clay are Monte Carlo, Madrid Open, and then the Italian Open. And then the French Open happens in May. And then straight away there is a Wimbledon. And then between Wimbledon and the US Open is the two other Masters events, which is one is the Canadian Open, is also one of the oldest tournaments in tennis, Canadian Open, and it is played on a hard court. And then you have the Cincinnati Masters. It's played in the U.S. And that is the second the Grand Slam between the Wimbledon and the U.S. Open. The last Masters 1,000 event before the U.S. Open, and then the U.S. Open, like I said, in end of August. And after the U.S. Open, there are two Masters. One is the Shanghai Masters, and then the last Masters event is the Paris Masters, and it is played on an indoor uh, hard court surface. And so that is the nine major masters tournaments, which are the most important tournaments, which carry 1,000 points after the four Grand Slams that I mentioned: Australian Open, French Open, Wimbledon, and US Open. And then there are ATP 500 tournaments, 500 points, ATP 250, the lowest one as well. And then there is this big tournament, ATP Tour Finals, that happens at the end of the year, even for WTA Women's Tour, where the top 8 players of the world, they qualify for it. And they are into like a red and green group, four players each in two groups, and then two of them come into the semifinals and then the finals. And there is a massive prize money for that tournament as well. And basically, talking about tennis, basically there are two kinds of players, the styles of play. I mean, normally you have a big serve volleyer and a baseliner as well. Serve volleyer, I mean, a typical example would be like a Boris Becker or a Pete Sampras or a Goran Ivanisevic, or even the recent Kevin Anderson. Those kind of big servers, the guys who have these big serve and they do come to the net, to volley. And Patrick Kraft of Australia was also a classic serve volley as well. I mean, even John McEnroe was a classic serve volley. People who have big serves and they come to the net and volley. And then there are these typical baseliners. The classic examples would be Bjorn Borg and then obviously one of my favorite, Andre Agassi, who they always stick to the baseline and dictate play from the baseline. Rafa Nadal is also a big baseliner, and Roger Federer kind of both. I mean, it's a serve volleyer, basically a serve volleyer, but is also obviously very good from the back of the court. And Novak Djokovic is also a baseliner, but he does come to the net. I mean, it's not like a serve volleyer. I mean, a baseliner will not come to the net, but there are certain baseliners who hardly ever come to the net, and there are some serve volleyers who always go to the net, like Ivanisevic or people like that. But there are players, serve volleyers, who also are very good from the baseline, like Pete Sampras was good, like Roger Federer was obviously very good, and so both players can do the other side as well. But basically, there are serve volleyers and baseliners, and normally serve volleyers are the ones who really do well at Wimbledon. Guys who have these big serves and come to the net, like Goran Ivanisevic. He only won the Wimbledon once, but he's been in the finals 4 times. I mean, Boris Becker, John McEnroe examples. Bjorn Borg was one exception who won the Wimbledon many times, who was a baseliner. Andre Agassi also won in 1992 as a baseliner. And clay court, I mean, that's where the baseliners really thrive, where you have to be very patient, and it's very slow. The surface is very slow, and the points take longer, and you need a lot of patience, and you see a lot of drop shots, lob shots, a lot of shots where you really have to be patient, and you can't just finish the point fast like a grass court or a hard court. And that's where people like Nadal obviously is the best player ever on the clay court. He has won the French Open like, I don't know, 13, 14 times. And normally it's very difficult. Like I've said, Bjorn Borg and Andre Agassi did win the Wimbledon being baseliners, and even Nadal has won the Wimbledon 2 times being a baseliner. But it's very difficult for a serve volleyer to win on a clay court like a French Open. Like Pete Sampras has never made it to the finals of the uh, French Open. I mean, even Roger Federer has only won one French Open. He hardly won that. He won not even against Nadal, against Robert Soderling. So what I'm saying is, volleyers hardly ever win on French clay courts as well. But baseliners have kind of found a way to win on Wimbledon as well, at Wimbledon as well. But normally that's how it goes. Volleyers do extremely well on Wimbledon on the grass courts, fast grass courts. Hard court also is very fast, and clay court are like the slower surface where you need a lot of patience. And those are the matches where it goes to 4-5 sets a lot, and a lot of broken games you see as well. People breaking serve, a lot of them you see. But on a grass court, you don't see a lot of serve being broken, obviously, because of the fast surface, and it's easier to hold the serve. So that is my video on tennis a bit. So I just gave an example of the, obviously I said the major three surfaces are grass court, clay court, and the hard court. The grass court major is the Wimbledon, and the clay court major is French Open, then the hard court Australian Open and US Open. Then I said about the 9 Masters events. then also the ATP Tour Finals, and then I also told you about the serve volleyers and the baseliners. So this is just an information, and I would love a lot of new people, youngsters who to probably start watching tennis. These days, a lot of cell phones, so I'm not expecting youngsters to keep away their cell phones all the time. But if you can start watch tennis, it will be a great thing, and this will be a start for you, I would say, because a lot of people don't know exactly what tournaments are there, which are the major tournaments, what surfaces, and some people get confused of the different surfaces. So that's why I gave this video, and I had a few requests from people to say that I should put a video on this so that I could clarify it to new people as well. And obviously, the people who know tennis, they will also probably just like here listening to this, just so that I'm giving and encouraging people to start watch tennis. So that is my video. Take care and God bless you.